Hello, and welcome to this afternoon's NRB live conversation on faith and finances, insights for wise money managers. We are delighted to welcome Miriam Neff and Valerie Neff Hogan, co-authors of the book Wise Women Managing Money. Miriam is the author of 12 books, a Christian counselor, and a frequent radio commentator. Valerie is a certified financial planner, author, and attorney who is helping groups and individuals learn about stewardship and financial freedom. Together, they host the 1-minute Wise Women Managing Money radio feature heard on numerous radio outlets. Miriam and Valerie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure.
Glad to be here.
So Miriam and Valerie, why is your perspective as two women who have written on the topic of managing money so important?
Well, I think that the statistics are coming out that we see women are really managing more. They're coming into more wealth. They're stewarding it now in numbers like 50% plus and increasing. And so we see that demographic. Women also are primarily going to be at least 50% single due to widowhood, divorce, remaining single. So, I mean, the topic of women managing and stewarding money, we are even hearing some statistics about 2/3 of donors will be women. So, I mean, for NRB and other nonprofit groups, that's really important.
Well, and another reason that we think it's so important is women, and statistically we know this, women lack financial confidence. And we know that all women can learn and all women can know this and all women can do this. So we are bringing to the table, I would say, first of all, biblical, but secondly, practical. And we're two women. Sometimes you hear women's voices differently than men. So yeah, we're kind of passionate about this.
That's beautiful. And it's such an empowering and equipping message. You know, the truth is, many find it challenging to talk about money, but you've made a ministry out of it. So what can Christian communicators do to learn how to talk better about money, wealth, financial wisdom, topics of that nature?
Well, one of the things we know that, first of all, we need to have a very solid foundation on the scripture. The first most prevalent topic is love. Second is finances and stuff. So this should be right up there next to the top of the list on what we're learning about. Mm-hmm. So we have this biblical basis that's going to be sure, and it isn't going to change. So it's very important that we have that biblical basis. But then we need to be practical and say, look, if we're already overseeing 51% of the wealth in the United States, and before long it'll be 73%, God is entrusting us with a whole lot. So we want to learn, and we can, and it's all there, and it's practical.
Right. And I think communicators can really put forward women's voices and faces talking about this, demonstrate women that are professionals in this area, or also just to speak to all audience and make sure they're included.
That's an encouraging word, and that will be an encouragement to viewers and listeners for sure. So in today's rapidly changing world, how can Christians adapt their financial management and their stewardship strategies to stay ahead of the curve and prepare for an uncertain future?
And so what I would say to stay ahead of the curve, ahead of the game, do what we're supposed to be doing, is this kind of old-fashioned, not bleeding edge or whatever technology advice is, let's do what God tells us to do, right? It's that same message over and over. God has very specific instructions as to how we're to build wealth, how we're to share wealth, how we're to steward and manage it. And those have not changed with the market. Even though we see movements in markets are primarily focused or moved by fear and greed. And neither one of those are a biblical basis for managing money. So we see a lot of fluctuations and movements. But what we can do is become educated on how the world system is, but run it through that biblical lens of what God has said to do all along. Have reserves. First of all, earn, then spend. I mean, very countercultural things. That still rings true. And we're seeing those concepts come back to roost again right now.
Well, to be specific, Proverbs says, prepare the horse for battle, but the victory is the Lord. So in other words, we don't know what the battle's going to bring, but we still, and as Valerie mentioned, we work and earn money so we can eat, biblical. starts out in Genesis. It talks about it in the New Testament. So there's this work ethic thing going on there. And then there's the no debt. There are very few instances where you can have debt. The debt numbers are staggering in families and individuals today. And the government doesn't set a good example, but the Bible is our basis for the example,
Right.
not elsewhere. So you can say, we could talk a lot about this. We'd have chapters on it in
We
the
do.
book, but it's so important to realize things have always changed. New Testament times old, they will in our country, and they will continue to.
Right.
So, but the biblical principles are always the same.
Yeah, so we cannot kind of get whipped around by the hype, so to speak. I mean, that solid biblical wisdom is still the best wisdom.
Yes, time tested. You know, one of the things in your book, in fact, I have a copy of your book right here, and I think we'll talk later about how our viewers can get a copy of that. But one of the things you talk about is the concept of generosity to God. In your perspective, is this the same thing as financial giving?
Well, in a sense, we want to be generous toward God, but in a sense, can we even be generous to God? Because it's all His to begin with. So we start with that principle, but we really want to show God appreciation. And so I don't look at giving or tithing or giving above time, giving talent, treasure, all those things that we can kind of quote unquote give back were really given to us in the first place. But it's more of a not only gesture of appreciation, it's kind of a demonstration that God is Lord, capital Lord, in our life, right? And that He owns it all. But it's also an act of worship, gratitude, thankfulness. So it's not really a to-do. It is a response in a sense.
And what we love to talk about is the Matthew 25 principle of the stewards. And they're all given different amounts. So in other words, if some woman or man or in a marriage, they're saying, well, our talents are few, still you double them, you put them to work. Or if they're a lot, you put them to work. If you don't do anything with them and hide them and don't acknowledge it's God's on loan to you, that steward didn't go well for him. So we want to be those really Matthew 25 generous people overseeing that. And for many people, like if you feel a little bit like you're lacking financial literacy, here's a big boost for you. Know your why. When you know it's God's, it's like if you want to buy something or if you want to go somewhere, what do? You research it and you figure it out. Okay, so wow, God has entrusted you with this.
Right.
So we say, know it, own it, like it, or change it. Now, when we talk about, we say we're practical. You know it, you keep track. Where's it going?
Right.
And then you own it and say, wow, that's looking back at me. That's what I'm doing. Same thing in marriage. And we have a chapter on marriage and finances. And by the way, Jerry Jenkins said all men should read this book. And he endorsed
oh boy, wait for the chat messages to come through. Jerry's like, okay, guys. Yeah,
So you know it, you own it, then
Yeah.
you say, do I like that? Does that honor God? If not, go to work on it. Get out the shears or the weed whacker or
Right.
whatever.
But I think it's to a thing of not only it's that act of worship and that act of gratitude that we manage and steward and obedience. Just and don't things go better when we just do what He told us to do? It's hard. It's not always easy, but
Isn't that right? And I think that there's a lot of different challenges and tensions that come up perhaps for those who are just beginning to think about financial wisdom for the first time, right? We want to save and plan and prepare and strategize for the future, but some may be hearing this and saying, well, I trust God to take care of me. What would you say to someone who is navigating that tension between the need to steward what we have wisely and wanting and needing to rely on God's provision?
yeah, I view this as kind of maybe not walking a tightrope, but it's that tension between faith and due diligence, right? So we don't want to be so focused on the numbers that we have that hoarding spirit. It's just that it's all about me. I've got this under control. I, and me. That's just a little too us focused, right? And not faith focused, we want to leave open the opportunity and the wiggle room for the miraculous, because God does bring that into our life. But I would say we don't really want to go at this with a YOLO, you only live once. So, oh, well, I'm just going to not do my due diligence and steward well and hope God cleans up the mess attitude. So there's a difference between faith and that approach. And so I really view it in attention. And for example, when we're planning and stewarding, there were a couple examples. I like to say it's Joseph's stewardship and stockpiling versus the guy with bigger barns. So both of them actually stockpiled, but one was doing it for himself. I need more, I've got more. The other one was doing it because God told Joseph to do it, and it was for the good of other people. It was but they were both stockpiling. So there's just a truckload of difference in the spirit and the why that we're doing something in that tension between faith and due diligence. I think we walk that all the time in our faith in many areas.
Well, and to those listening say, well, does it have to be always to this organization or this church or whatever? We need to remember scripture also says to help those in need. Mm-hmm. So in other words, I know sometimes we know someone in a family where there's a big health crisis, and they may have been staying on budget and have some reserve, but a health crisis can wipe everything and more out like nothing. Well, other families in the body of believers can help them in some ways. Mm-hmm. And it may be that an appliance wears out and you can have one delivered. In other words, someone may say, well, that's a big bill, but what can you do? And the small thing can be something that honors God. And then one of the things that we see all the time is then neighbors and other people who aren't believers say, wow, look at the body of believers. Look at how they're coming around that person to help in their time of need. And it may be, though, that it's that one-on-one thing. It may be through the church. It may be through a great organization that we're helping to support. Those are all good. But we also say, lay your budget out before the Lord. And I do paper and pencil. I'm old school. Val and Mark, her husband, they're so techie. What is it you do?
We do spreadsheets, we do apps, we do all kinds of things. So, it doesn't really matter how to get it done, but we steward for the Lord and we walk that tension. And I think, I just remember the verse about we can cause others to praise the Lord by our giving. And boy, there are days when I've seen others that I'd like to see praising the Lord. And so the Bible talks about that from our giving and from our generous example. But key to doing that, to generosity, is the stewardship and to make margin in our budgets and our lives, just waiting for those divine appointments where we're doing what God is asking us to do in the moment.
And one of the things we say too is, if you aren't putting aside money and building that reserve, that 3 to 6 months, and for some families that might be $35,000 to have a half a year, depending on your income and what you're spending. It may sound like a lot. Start with $5 a week. Can you do without that one special cup of coffee? And I like coffee a lot. But can you say, okay, I'm going to not do that. And then your confidence grows. And the other thing that we've seen, when you show God, I want to be obedient to you, he steps in unique ways. One woman told me when she started, she felt that God kept her old car running longer with fewer repairs. Now, is that in the Bible? No, but God sees this person, this couple wants to be obedient, right, and they're doing something. And then you also say, wow, I'm doing something. Right. And then you go from there. You start where you are, you know it, and you own it and say, do I like that?
That's just wonderful. And several of the things you said just now, Valerie, I love your framing of due diligence. That's a wonderful way of thinking about stewardship. And Miriam, what you said about availability to meet small needs as they arise, whether it's the small appliance that breaks and someone needs a replacement. I can even recall being a beneficiary of that type of generosity at another time in life. And it is so meaningful to the recipient, and it's remembered and it's valued so much, and how wonderful to put yourself in a position to be that person for someone else. Well, Miriam, you had mentioned coffee, and I'm imagining that from this conversation, there may be several who would like to have coffee with you at NRB convention. And I'm told that you both will be attending and looking to speak with those who are there.
We will. You'll see us roaming the floors, definitely, probably with some lattes, some coffees. So you can catch us there. We'd love to meet up with you. And we just have enjoyed that conference for years and years. And so we'll be there again this year, Lord willing.
Well, and we want to serve you. And, wisewomenmanagingmoney.com is where you can go and send us a message. And we'd love to sit with you. Some of you may be network owners. Our Wise Women Managing Money is on many, many outlets now, including Moody Broadcasting and Bot Network and some others. We'd love to be more a service to your listeners because we're unique. I'm not saying we're great or smart or anything, but we are unusual and
highly caffeinated.
And there's nothing like this. And it's women's voices talking about money and finances. We'd love to meet with you or be interviewed with you or do television. We've done all of that there. We love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. In fact, I think it may have been at 2022 convention where I met both of you for the first time, and you were kind enough to give me a copy of your book. And I so look forward to seeing both of you again. Can I offer each of you a parting thought before we close out?
Absolutely.
Well, one of the things I would like to say to those listening is NRB is a very special and important organization. I'm not biased just because my husband was a part of it. Even he was the finance guy on the board for a while. I'm not saying it because of that, but it's a unique opportunity. The world is not in a great place. Media is a great way to get the word out there. Radio, satellite, I mean, there's so many methods that people are using. I want to applaud NRB members and say, take advantage of stuff. Take advantage of the fact that we have information. We want you to have it. We want to serve you. We love the organization, so why not give back as well? And we might even buy you coffee.
Also, I would just say that we're available if you'd like perspectives on reaching out to a women's audience and just knowing some of the things that are challenges in stewardship, that are just data points and statistics of what's coming down the road as far as women in stewardship, women as far as confidence in money, women as donors. We're available to talk with you about those kinds of trends as well.
Well, and I would also add that at wisewomenmanagingmoney.com, if you click on that, we have a 26 video series, 5 minutes long each. And we talk about many of these in detail. So if you want to know about what we think about investing, and I have many opinions on that, we have a chapter on that. But from that, because we did that video series, 5 minutes each, a lot of people don't have a whole lot of time. You can say, is this what I want to offer my audience? Or might I want to offer this on a platform? And someone saw those, actually a Moody Press guy, and said, this needs to be a book. So the book is a lot longer, more on each topic. But why are we doing this? Because God has entrusted us the opportunity to do it. We love to, get a little bit of makeup on, although not all the time, and talk to people about this. We've gone to churches and done Saturday morning brunches talking about this, lunch and learns.
Lots of different platforms. So yeah, we're available and we'll hope to see people at the convention.
Well, that is wonderful. And what an incredible ministry to provide accessible solutions on a topic area that is challenging for many, but so many want to learn more about. It's been such an honor to have you with us today. These were our final thoughts from two wise money managers, Miriam Neff and Valerie Hogan. Thank you so very much, Miriam and Valerie, for being with us today. And we look forward to seeing you at convention. And I hope that today's conversation ends up launching many more conversations in person at convention and beyond. And to our NRB audience, thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you next time.